Wake up, the footy's back!
Did you hear that?
It's back! Let's go!
G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, and Ellie said Weekend Wrap. Brought to you of course by Crowcast. Thanks to everyone who has joined us again on Discord and on YouTube. As always, a cast of thousands filing in, which we're most appreciative of, and Tuesday nights in particular we're live and interactive. So if you're on Discord and you want to have your say, then please stick your hand up. We haven't had anyone on for a while, so it'll be good to have someone on. If you feel so inclined, stick your hand up in the Discord stage and I'll get you on. And of course, if you're on YouTube and you want your comment read out and discussed, then feel free to drop us a super chat and we'd be more than happy to do so. Of course, this show, Tuesday Night Live, and also the Weekend Wrap is brought to you by the good people at Next Body Corporate Services. One flat fee, no insurance commissions, and a prompt personal service. And Macca, you would know as well as anybody how good the people at Next Body Corporate Services are. That was a ringing endorsement because I had you on mute.
Well, I'll repeat it, mate. I'll say you just can't afford to go elsewhere.
No, you can't. You can't. And we are very pleased tonight to welcome back the inimitable Big Man. How are you, sir?
Good, mate. Just feeling a bit refreshed after obviously being on my deathbed only a few weeks ago. But yeah, no, it feels good to be back. And sorry for stealing your limelight a bit, Mac. I know this is your show, but I thought it'd be nice to get a word in or two about the game and also about the one coming up.
Mate, I'm delighted you're here. I really am. I do enjoy being on with you.
Thanks,
Mackie, you wouldn't be delighted if you knew the conversation that Big Man and I had during the week where Big Man was actively undermining you and trying to get you off the show altogether.
This is false. Fake news. Do not listen. I haven't talked to Boss all week, mate. Don't worry.
Actually, I was talking to him today. He would have told me if that was true.
Hey, Macca, can you adjust your camera again, mate? You've slipped down in your chair again. You look like a little garden gnome.
How we doing?
Go. There you go. Now you look like a real boy.
Oh, gee whiz.
Oh, shit. And here we go again. All right. Without any further ado, Macca, why don't we just avail ourselves of the weekend's results, shall we?
Why don't we do that?
All right. And, of course, see the... How am I going? I'm starting well. The round started, of course, with... Geelong v Brisbane, and Brisbane getting up 19-9, 1-23. Looked to have the wood on Geelong for most of the game, although Geelong did come back after getting absolutely blitzed in the first quarter, 14-17, 101, a margin there of 22 points, Macca.
Yeah, look, the Brisbane were far too good for them, I thought, really. And I know that the scores don't quite indicate that, but Geelong have now lost 4 of their last 5 games, and they face GWS next week, who've beaten them in their last 4 encounters. So Geelong not travelling that well. But the Lions, on the other hand, they really set up to win the first quarter with 8 goals to 1 goal 5. And although the Cats, and it was Dangerfield, 36 years of age. He was the boy that sort of led a bit of a comeback. But, yeah, right through the game, the Brisbane's midfield, Ashcroft, Neal, Bailey, Dunkley, I wish we had players like that. And for Geelong, Danger was outstanding. A 36-year-old playing as good as that, they just don't do it. And Holmes and Donaldson Smith just went scabbing cheap kicks around reasonable game. But, yeah, look, Brisbane, they're coming good at the right time, and the reverse could be said for Geelong.
Yeah, disposals for Brisbane, Ashcroft 32, Neal 28 and Wilmot 26 for Geelong, Bailey Smith 31, Max Holmes 30, Tom Stewart 25. Goal scorers for Brisbane, Lohman had 5, Bailey 3 and Morris 3. And for the Cats it was Danger with 5, Neal with 3 and Dempsey with 2. Am I the only one who thinks that Bailey Smith gets a lot of ineffectual disposals?
No, I don't think he's that. I wouldn't have said that. But
he's not in the Rory Laird category. But I just feel like sometimes he's not as damaging as he could be.
Has dashes, mate. And there are times there when nothing much is happening, and all of a sudden he'll do something really good out of the blue, which gets a goal. And I'm not saying that he does that with every possession, but and I'm not saying he's a match winner, but he's one of those players that can always do something special.
Yes, that's very true. All right, the next game on the agenda was the Swans versus the Bulldogs, and it was Sydney getting up 13-12-90 to the Bulldogs 7-13-55, easy 35 points there to Sydney. For the Swans, Heaney had 27, Gilden had 27, and Mills had 26. For the Bulldogs, Dale had 32, Richards 29, Kennedy 22. Goal scorers, Sydney, Charlie Curnow had 6, McLean had 3, Heaney had 1. And for the Bullies, Jones had 2, Croft had 2, and Dale, amongst a couple of others, had 1. Fairly comfortable to Sydney there.
Really far too good for the Dogs, and they virtually set up the win in the first quarter with 5 goals to zip. Grundy absolutely monstered English. I couldn't believe how easily he monstered him. And the clearance was pretty even. City controlled the game with the inside 50s. And Heaney and Warner, they were the classy ones, and they gave plenty of drive and set up plenty of goals. Beveridge made a really strange move. He put English onto McLean down back and lobbed into ruck. It was a useless move. Nothing happened out of it. And Curnow got 6, and he must be loving it up there. He's in a winning team, and McLean got 3. Bailey, Dale and Richards, they were the Dogs' best. Bontempelli had a really quiet one by his standards.
Yeah, just following on from the previous one with regards to midfielders and ineffective disposals, I feel like this is where the Brownlow is a bit flawed now, because particularly now that the umpires can see stats, they'll look at someone who's had 31 stats and guys had a really good game. But someone made a really good point in the chat, Cons, there, saying big disposals lack impact at times and it'd be better with a fully fit Jeremy Cameron clunking marks. And I think when you're talking about the best player on the ground, it's not always the bloke that racks up 40 touches. Sometimes it's the bloke that has an impact on the game. And I don't know, I just think there's a lot of stat patterns going around in the AFL at the moment, particularly with the way the game's played. There's the way the ball's moved at the moment. There's a lot of, very easy link handballs and short passes and all that really don't have any impact on proceedings.
It's a good point, because there's 2 of the greatest stat patters going around at the moment. Bailey Smith is a stat patter, and even Nick Dacos, who's a mighty player and one of the best in the competition. He runs around and gets a lot of free, padding his stats with running 15 metres away and taking the ball, or running past with a handball when the player could have easily kicked it. So you're right. It probably should be that the impact on the game, but you're right. They'll look at the numbers and go and vote that way.
Next game, Hawthorn v Melbourne, and it was Melbourne causing a minor upset, winners by 35 points, 19-11-125. To Hawthorn, 14-6-90 for the D's. The usual one game that's back to front. Sorry about that, people. For the D's, Sparrow had 27, Steele 26, Bowie 24. For the Hawks, Amon 28, Dylan Moore 27, Josh Battle 24. Goal scorers for Melbourne, Petty 3, Langford 2, Fritsch 2, and for the Hawks, Watson 3, Moore 2, and Lewis 2. Melbourne doing us a little bit of a favour, keeping 4th spot within reach, Macca.
Yeah, they did. in fairness to the Hawks, they were undermanned. They had Battle from defence missing, Amon from defence missing, Reeves missing from ruck, and Watson missing from the forward line out injured. But that's what
Is
you got to
that
play.
giving me the wrong stats again? That's what it's done. Yeah, it has, because I read half those players out. Let me just find the right stats. I don't know. Every round, there's one game where it seems to pull the stats from the previous time they met, which is kind of weird. Let me read out the proper stats. So for Melbourne, it was Sparrow 26, Pickett 25, and Van Rooyen and Fitzgerald 24. And for the Hawks, it was Newcombe 27, Ward 25, and Hardwick 25. Goal scorers for Melbourne, Van Rooyen had 5, Fritsch had 5, and Sharp had 2. And for the Hawks, Chol had 5, Ward had 2, and Ginnivan had 2. Apologies for that.
That's right. Well, they had those 4 players out. That wasn't an acceptable excuse for the hiding they got in the first half. It was 86 points to 9 at half time. 86 to 9. That is just a thrashing. And in the third quarter, they managed to get just an even score, and there's no indication of what was coming in the last quarter. But then the Hawks, players that you hadn't sided all game, they got into it and they started winning all their positions, and they kicked 9 goals to 2 in the last quarter. But they still lost by 35 points, even though it was such a dominant last quarter.
It was an incredible kind of scoreline, wasn't it?
Oh, you couldn't make it up, and
No.
To me, Gawn's the architect. I mean, what a magnificent player he is. To me, I still think he's possibly the greatest ruckman for at least the last 20, 30 years. And, he was the architect. And Van Rooyen and Fritsch up forward, they both got 5. And, overall, it was a poor performance by Hawks, bar 1 quarter.
Yeah. I'd just say to people in the chat that if you want to talk about the game coming up, probably best to wait until we actually get to that segment, because I can't really answer your questions until then. All right. The next one, the Giants 16-13-109 to Freo 13-10-88, causing a bit more of an upset. 21 points in the end for the Giants. Oliver 32, continuing really good vein of form. Callahan 30 and Ash 28 for Freo. Sarong 31, Warner 29. Clark 23, goal scorers, Stringer had 7 if you don't mind, Green had 3, Cadman had 2, and for Freo, Tracy had 3, Jackson 2, and Voss 2.
Yeah, well, the Giants, they were also the Giant killers, because they ended Freo's previously unbeaten run of 14 wins in a row. Which is a good run. 14 wins in a row is good. And you're always prone just to put in a poor one after that, and look, but with GWS, though, in fairness to them, they lost Whitfield to a very unusual concussion. One of his teammates pushed Darcy, and Darcy's elbow hit poor old Whitfield, who's just standing there innocently, and he gets knocked out. So it's just one of those strange things that happen. But Freo dominated the hit-outs, but GWS dominated the clearances with Callahan and Oliver performing extremely well. Oliver would have been handy for us. He's a bit untidy, but he would have been handy. And as you mentioned, Stringer 7 up forward, and Green got 3. And they just had so many entries they had to score in the end. And I thought Freo were disappointing, but Sarong and Warner, they played well.
Well, they had to come off the boil at some point, I think, mate.
Yeah, I think it's a logical thing. It's one of those things. You can't keep winning forever.
The Pies 15-14-104 over Gold Coast 15-8-98, a margin of 6 points. Dacos 31, Josh Dacos 25, Lipinski 24 for the Pies. For Gold Coast, Noble had 33, Yuland had 28, and Miller 28. Goal scorers, Membry had 3 for the Pies, McStay had 3, and Anderson had 2. And for Gold Coast, Humphrey had 3, King had 3, and Long had 2. And the match, aside from the result, Macca will probably be talked about a bit later with regards to a few ugly incidents.
Yes, I think that will be the case. Look, it was a nice touch game for many reasons. Collingwood managed to some of them were footy.
Just volume down a little bit, mate.
Collingwood managed to sneak in by 6 points with Dacos leading the way, and he'll be BOG again. You mentioned there was a bit of a 36-man brawl after half-time siren, and we'll talk about that. And the AFL hated / loved it to the tune of a total fines of 41,500. With both Maynard and Miller
We'll talk about
fined.
that later.
Okay. While it was a much improved performance by Gold Coast compared to their previous weeks and 3-goal effort, but still it's their 6th consecutive loss, and we face them next this week. But for the Pies, Dacos, plural, were very, very good, and for Gold Coast, Ulands, plural, were both very good.
Is a plural Dacos a Dakai?
It's an interesting thing, Pete. I don't know. It could be.
Hey, what's your volume turned up to on your microphone?
God knows. Is it too loud?
Well, it clips when you talk loudly, so I'm just wondering whether you need to just turn it down a fraction.
How's that?
Fantastic.
Yeah,
All right, the next one. Carlton continuing on their winning way despite a spirited effort by Richmond, getting up by 2 points, 10-14 to 10-12. Pardon me, for Carlton, Short had 29. This is another one that's wrong. Bloody hell. One moment, please. One moment, please. I don't know why my little robot is doing this. For Carlton, Jagger Smith 29, Hewitt 26, and Cripps 25. For Richmond, Taranto 25, Ralph Smith 20, Nankervis and McAuliffe, and those two 19. Goal scorers, we had for Carlton, Kemp had 2, Hewitt had 2, and Mackay had 1 along with a few others. And for Richmond, Mansell had 2, Lafau had 2, and Campbell had 2, and also Bolter had 2. Apologies for those stats.
Yeah, not the greatest game in the world to watch this one. The Blues managed to hold on to get a narrow win, making it 7 in a row since Vossi's sacking. The Tigers started well on the wet and split position. They led at quarter time, and there was another melee at quarter time, but nothing compared to the other one. But where Carlton were winning the ball was they had Hewitt, who Vossi wouldn't pick, which is quite amazing. So since he's been back in the side, he's been probably one of their very best players every week. But Hewitt, and he was again this week. And he and Smith, they were winning more than their share of the ball. And Carlton got in front in the second quarter in a very uninspiring game, and they managed to hang on for the rest of the game to win by 2 points. I mean, it's against Richmond, who's heaps of injuries and down near the bottom of the ladder. So Richmond, their best for the old timers: Taranto, Short, and Bolter.
Alrighty, next one. St Kilda 17-15, 117, smashed Essendon 7-8-50. Margin of 67 points for the Saints. Miller had 46, if you don't mind. Brad Hill had 42, Maxwell 33. For Essendon, Merritt had 28, Durham had 24, Farrow had 21. Goal scorers: Darcy Wilson 2, Rowan Marshall 2, and Community 2. And for Essendon, Caddy had 3, Roby had 1, Peter Wright had 1, along with a couple of others.
Well, it was the Wanganeen Miller show for me. I mean, he just ran around the oval doing what he liked. As you mentioned, he had 46 disposals, 906 metres gained. He just decides he's going to go, and he just goes, and they can't keep up with him. He was part of that first half demolition. The Saints were leading by 65 points at half time, and Brad Hill had 40 disposals. Max Hall, he joined in the party with 33 disposals. They winners all over the ground, and Marshall winning in ruck in DeConning's absence. Essendon managed, to their credit, they managed to even the second half. Didn't gain anything, but they evened it, and Merritt moved from half back to the middle in that second half, and Durham and Roby helped out in the midfield. But they do have a player of the future in Caddy at full forward. He's a very talented player. He would be a high goal scorer at a better team. But as good as the Saints were, Essendon deservedly are bottom of the ladder.
Yeah, Dean Solomon not doing his coaching chances any good at all.
No.
And the final game of the round, Port Adelaide 10-13-73, a scrappy win over North 7-10-52, 21-point winners. Another one with the wrong stats. One moment. Gonna have to fix it up during the week, Macca. Can you get onto that, mate?
Yeah, mate. I'll wave a magic wand and see if it works.
Yeah. Zach Butters had a quiet one with 26, Horn Francis 24, and Burn Jones with 24. And this is another example of useless stats, Mac. For North, Harry Sheasel had 40. Davis Uniacke had 31, and McKercher had 28. And yet they couldn't get close. In fact, the amount of possessions that North had compared to Port and couldn't get close to them is an indictment on the style of game they're playing at the moment, I think.
Yeah, look, it wasn't a great spectacle to watch, I'll tell you that. It was both from the players and the umpires, it was an over-umpired game, but that's not excuse.
It was something like 31 umpiring decisions to half-time or something or other?
Well, 70-something for the game.
Yeah,
71.
Just crazy.
Yeah, but, that wasn't the reason. It was just a rotten game to watch. And it was a low-scoring first half. And but Butters and Horn Francis, they put on their motors in the third quarter. And they got Port to have a bit of a lead at three-quarter time. They do have George Yards has got 3 goals, and young Whitlock, I do like the style of young Whitlock. I think they've found a nice player in him. He got a couple of goals. But in the last quarter, it was all Port, because it was all tied away at three-quarter time, and, they just lived in Port's forward line and barely got into the opposition, so 3-4 to a point. And look, Horn Francis and Butters, they're both equally good. Burn Jones, they played. Look, he was a very good defender. For some reason, they moved him up forward and they left him there for a few years where he was rotten. They finally put him back in the back line, so he's playing well again. And for North Melbourne, look, Sheasel, at least he does get his 40 possessions. And I think he does try to do something with it. It's whether the players at the other end are good enough to get it. LDU and Luke Parker, who in his retirement virtually is playing well for North Melbourne. Look, I've got real doubts about Clarkson's ability to use the talents of this team. I don't think he is the coach for this team.
He's not getting the results, that's for sure, and that's a results-oriented sport, so I can't really argue with what you're saying. All right, that leaves us with a ladder of Fremantle still on top with 14 wins, Sydney on 13, Hawthorn and Brisbane and Adelaide and Melbourne all on 10, Geelong and Western Bulldogs on 9, Collingwood and Carlton along with North on 8, St Kilda, the Giants, Gold Coast on 7, Port on 6, West Coast on 4, Richmond 2 and Essendon on 1 with both those last two pretty average percentages. So we're well in the hunt for top 4 still, Macca, but that Port game I reckon is going to hurt us.
It could well do that. We'll see.
All right. Well, we may as well bring Big Man into the fray because, of course, we like to give Macca his little say about proceedings on the weekend in regards to the Adelaide game. We may as well give Big Man his say as well. For those who were living under a rock, Adelaide 15-9-99 after a fast start, getting over West Coast by 25 points. West Coast 11-8-74. For Adelaide, Dawson had 27, Rankin 27, Laird 25. For West Coast, Duggan 24, Reid 23, Tim Kelly 19. Fogg kicked 4 goals, Keys 3 and Jake Saligo 2. And for West Coast, Shanahan 3, Waterman 3 and Starcevic, along with a few others, 1. Macca, we weren't terribly impressed, Brownie and I, on Sunday night. What were your thoughts?
It was a disappointing performance, mate. It was a shocking performance. Look, we had complete early dominance of the midfield, and we scored freely for a fair part of the first quarter, leading by 29 points. But 3 quarters more, we ended up scrambling in by 25 points. Means we were outscored by 4 points by the 16th team in the last 3 quarters. And we lost Phil Thorpe, before the game, not being well. And Billy Dowling come in. And it was very hard to judge on one game. But I don't think Billy, he didn't disgrace himself. He didn't say pick me next week. But look, overall, I was disappointed with our effort. I can name a few players that I thought did well, but there was a lot that didn't. But it's the overall game plan, the overall style. It's not a premiership style. And the only positive I can find out of it, mate, is that we won the game. And the downside is that if we reproduce that same effort again in next week, we wouldn't stand a chance no matter who we're playing. If it wasn't an outstanding game by Dawson and a good backup game from Rankin and Fogarty, we would have lost. It was a down game, and I have no optimism for finals based on this game. It was a shocker.
Big man, did you get along, or did you see the game at all?
Yeah, so I caught the replay. I knew the result, but I caught the replay, and I'm not quite as down about it as Macca. Obviously, I wasn't overly impressed, and it definitely, as the game wore on, the less impressed I was. But I know obviously the first quarter was great. That was the response we wanted to see. I actually thought we maintained most of the rage in the second, but we just didn't cash in. We had a couple of goals that were touched on the line or Texas bounce, and a couple other moments where we stuffed things up where we probably should have put a bit more on the scoreboard. And what ended up being a 5-goal lead at halftime should have been about an 8 or 9 goal lead. My worry is that the last quarter was they ratcheted up their intensity and pressure, and once again we couldn't handle it. We went into our shells again, couldn't get the ball at all. Getting dominated inside 50 count, and it worried me because obviously this is a team. In all fairness to West Coast, they're still very much a developing team, and they made us look really second rate, ticking the first 15 minutes or so of that last quarter. So that wasn't pleasing to see. Overall, though, look, sometimes you just got to get these wins. Obviously, I think we're having a bit of a dip again, unfortunately, at the moment. It felt like our little streak of good form has come to an abrupt end. So the important thing for now is just to keep clocking up the wins as much as possible, and hopefully things turn around before the finals start.
My biggest worry, and Brownie and I were in agreement with this on Sunday night, is that we don't do very well when the game isn't on our terms. And I think teams are starting to work out that if you get in our faces, our game style and our the way that we want to play breaks down, and we don't really seem to have any alternatives. And again, some of that is on the players, some of that is on the coaching. I felt that we didn't really have an answer when, after 20 minutes or so, McQuarrie decided to get behind the ball and put a couple behind and try to clog up our entries and bounce off half back. We didn't really seem to, at any stage, have a message to drop the eyes and hit up short targets going into forward 50. We kept bombing it in and bombing it down the line, and slow switches and all the usual stuff. And I just feel like we're so one-dimensional, and it almost seems as if Matthew Nicks has got this this game plan that he's worked out that doesn't account for the fact that there's 2 teams on the ground, and that you're not always going to get the game on your own terms. You're not always going to get things going your way, and how to break up that sort of situation. What are your tactics to break up that situation when a team gets on top or gets some momentum or decides to really apply the screws? We don't have a means to counter that. Mike in the chat when I say get in our faces, I mean really apply frontal pressure, like apply pressure on the ball carrier.
I totally agree with you, Fane. It is a one-dimensional game plan because it works well. While it's 18 players all playing in their various positions, but as you said, they reacted to it by making it very difficult for us to enter, and we don't seem to have any game plan worked out for that at all.
I was more concerned about the fact that we just could not get the ball back in our hands at the start of that fourth quarter.
Oh, shocking!
And when you compare it to the first quarter, where everything was on our terms, we owned possession, we owned inside 50s, we owned clearances, particularly in the center. And then in that last quarter, we completely shat the bed. And there was, apart from Dawson taking intercept marks, there was no ability to really stem the flow. Even when we got an answer back from Keys, they went down the other end again and then kicked another goal. And I felt like I kept waiting for things to change for us to wrestle the game back in our turns, but it never really happened. And, you look at that last quarter and think, well, did we put the cue on the rack? And our mindset was that we were already halfway into the, back home, or did Eagles just lift their intensity and we once again capitulated? It's hard to know sometimes. Our running and kilometres and sprints we're all down, so I wonder if we had checked out a bit, knowing the result, thinking the result was basically locked in after quarter time. But I guess one thing that stood out to me as well, when you look past, because I really do think it was just that last quarter that was terrible. The rest was whatever. The lack of killer instinct in this team. I think back to 2013, 2014, we weren't particularly good in those, Sando years then. But when we had an easy kill, boy, did we put them to the sword. We would thrash teams, Giants, Brisbane. We had some games where 100+ wins. And there was a little moment in the game where we could have done the same against West Coast, even albeit against them at Perth, which is never that easy. There was a time there where I thought to myself, this could have gone on to be a really big, 12, 13, 14 goal win. But we just didn't seem to have that want to do it. And unfortunately, we actually let them back in the game. And that sort of stood out to me this year. We haven't really had a big win aside from the North game. And I just wonder, do we get self-satisfied mid-game that we're job's done, or are we just not that good and we just don't have the ability to put teams to the sword?
Well, I don't disagree that there's a bit of an attitude thing there, big man. That I felt like in the second quarter we Lairised quite a bit. We overused the ball. There was it was just not a tight performance. There was a lot of loose disposals, a lot of silly turnovers, and it was just through overuse. And this team has not got the right to be complacent or to be arrogant. We saw the previous week in the first quarter against Port, where a couple of Tex and Rash were interacting with the Port crowd, and we haven't got any right to be like that. We haven't won a thing. We've underperformed. This team should step out every week with nothing but the spectre of last year's final series fresh in their mind. It should be stuck on the bloody wall. So I think there is a little bit of, whether it's complacency or what, I don't know, but this team has got no right to rest on its laurels, because it hasn't got very big laurels to rest on.
I've got to, when you said the last bit just before, I was going to say we haven't got the bloody laurels. Seriously, they're not playing that well. And as you said, they got in front rather easily. It wasn't. I thought we were in for maybe a 20-goal win the way we started, and we still won a lot of clearances, but the usage of our ball was horrible, and we just never capitalised on it. And I don't think we didn't keep any pressure up, and I just think that they suddenly realised they lifted their game, and they suddenly realised that they could make a game of it. But I never expected what was coming in the last quarter. I mean, that was the thing that really was bad. As Big Man said, the ball was locked in their forward line, and we didn't have the ability to get it out. And we're talking about the team that's 16th or whatever it is. We didn't have the ability to get it out. So that's we're not that good. Either that, or we haven't got a good game plan or something. But I just was disappointed with the whole game, really.
I just wonder, Big Man, whether we're kind of victims of the Gatorade bottle game plan. That everything has to work a certain way, and the game plan it's been mapped out on a whiteboard, but it doesn't account for the fact that football's a dynamic game. It's a game of momentum. Sometimes during the course of a game, you've got to change the way you play to counter what the opposition are doing. I don't feel like there's any. We rely on individual brilliance. Like, how many times are we going to chuck Dawson back to try and stem the flow? The players seem to be overthinking at times, but at other times that it's like they feel like they're, untouchable. I don't know. It's hard to put a finger on it.
No, I get what you're saying. It's a hard one to figure out because there are moments in the game, and even this game, I know you've got to take into account the opposition, but this has been the case most of the year where we actually look genuinely good in patches. And to be fair, the old fourth quarter game, that rarely happens even with the best teams. Even look at Brisbane on the weekend against Geelong. Like they stunned Geelong, but they let Geelong back in eventually. They couldn't keep it up for 4 quarters. So it's very hard to maintain the rage. I guess for me, it's just more that we couldn't have found a way to keep the foot on the throat. And then when West Coast finally sort of reacted and responded, we actually looked like the hunted. We looked like we were going back into our shells. And if we're doing that against West Coast in the fourth quarter in a game where we basically got the win wrapped up, what's going to happen against better opposition that come out from the start? And we saw what happened in the finals last year. So, I mean, obviously I didn't see it live, but I never would have thought the game was truly in danger. But gee, there was a patch there where if it wasn't for Dawson saving our asses, they might have got close. And that's pretty spiriting considering how much ascendance we had for the majority of that game to allow that to happen.
And your comment about killer instinct is true, because really the game should have been sewn up at half time. And instead of having that killer instinct, we did lairize in the second quarter. We did over-possess. We did try to do cute things and all the rest of it. It's like we got ahead of ourselves. It's like you haven't won the game yet. It's quarter time. You haven't won the game yet. You need percentage to get into the top 4. There's like almost a lack of awareness of the circumstances that we're in and the importance of, gaining percentage when things are so tight to get into a top 4 position. And I don't know. It's a very, is it a bit of the big fish and little pond syndrome in Adelaide, where we're the big team in town at the moment, so they're kind of feeling a bit untouchable? I don't know, because West Coast made them look stupid after quarter time.
Made us look stupid.
Hmm.
Oh, I don't think so after quarter time. No, I think if you look back at that second quarter in particular.
No, they absolutely did, big man. No, they absolutely did, big man. They absolutely did. Because we should have been 50 points up at halftime.
I agree.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, but I'm saying there were goals gone begging, and
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Think of
a ruthless team puts them away.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's West Coast. I think it's more that we lacked the ability to keep it going. I don't think that was West Coast until the final quarter, where they did actually start to really get things going, and we couldn't respond. And that's why I was concerned. But in terms of the big fish in the small pond, I don't know if that's the case here. I don't. Maybe the Port game. I mean, maybe there was a bit of arrogance going to that to not think that to not think that Josh Carr was going to get them fired up. and be the underdog and all that stuff. But
how arrogant do you
don't
have to be to leave Zach Butters alone for the whole game?
Yeah,
That's the epitome of arrogance. Sorry, mate. I'm sorry, big man, but you are understating what's been going on the last fortnight. Maybe you've had too much bintang.
I wasn't over there. No, I'm not. I'm just sort of, moving past the Port game because that's well and truly in the back mirror for me. But this game specifically, I don't think we look like an arrogant team in the sense that that's just not how it came across to me. I think we're a team that's actually lost its confidence very quickly.
Oh, no way. You go back and have a look at that second quarter. The way we overpossessed the ball unnecessarily, the way we tried to do low percentage stuff instead of just being ruthless and scoring.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Fee. I just thought that was that a squeal or something?
No, that's the remnants of the bloody disease I had about a month ago.
I thought you were startled at my comment.
No.
No, I agree with Fee because I mean we took off and we were far too good, and we took our foot off the pedal. There's no doubt about it, and because we Learised instead of doing the obvious direct thing, we were trying fancy stuff, and and Fee made a reference back to the Port game, and which isn't the players. This is the coach. With Butters and Horn Francis allowed to run around like unregistered dogs.
Yes.
And so that's the coach. And for me, I just don't think this coach has got... Look, we've got a game plan, which we carried out early. They counter it. And we don't have the second one. We just don't seem to have the second one, which means that, okay, they're up to our first game. They're going to neutralise us there, so we just have to do this a little bit differently. And the good teams, they have that. They've got plan A, plan B, plan C, and the ones that win flags, they've got those. But we were in a situation where they altered the way they were playing. We didn't. And then all of a sudden that just became neutral. Now, we should have then made some changes to try and get back on top, but we didn't.
I've got to clarify what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I think that we didn't take the foot off the pedal. In fact, I'm emphasising that. That's one of my biggest frustrations with this game. But I don't know if it's we're too good to be doing, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's the attitude. I think it's more that we're not good enough right now to take the pedal off the foot and then get it back. I just don't think we're in sync enough as a team. We're playing good enough footy, and we don't have enough good players in form to be doing that. And I was disappointed that we didn't cash in that second quarter. Third quarter, we just meandered, and then we just never got the game truly back in our terms, and we actually relinquished control of the game to a pretty ordinary Eagles outfit. So, as I said, every quarter just got worse. That was the problem, and my concern is we never got it back in our terms in that last quarter when they were coming, and that's West Coast. Imagine when it's going to be against Freo in a month's time when we play them in Perth. That could be a bloodbath if we have that same, going to water as soon as the pressure ramps up.
The thing of it is, it doesn't take a talented side to put pressure on the opposition. And a team like West Coast and us in the past, when we were, at the beginning of this current cycle, one of the things that we could hang our hat on is the fact that we never gave up and that we always applied pressure, and we're still, highly ranked in terms of pressure stats. But the problem is that doesn't rely on talent. That relies on intent and effort. And so that's why we can come up with less talent against less talented sides like Port Adelaide and West Coast and get rolled, because talent doesn't dictate pressure, and if we can't handle pressure and work our way through it, then we're vulnerable to any team, good or bad, that can bring that level of pressure.
Which is what happened. That's exactly what happened, because we went from dictating the game to being neutralised to struggling all in the one game.
Yep.
I mean, and that, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And that's not just the players. Part of it goes onto the players, but it also goes up to upstairs, the people that are directing them, the people that are asking, and it shouldn't be just on game day. These things that should be practiced, rehearsed in training. So they've got plan A, plan B, plan C. And I don't think we've got a plan B or a plan C. Well, I think we've got Nix's plan A, and we hope to God that works.
I think the other thing that contributes to this attitude of, call it complacency, call it Lairising, call it arrogance, call it whatever you like, is a lack of selection pressure. And we discussed after the Port game whether the club should make an example, make a few statements with selection. And we kind of wagered that they wouldn't do that they would, back the boys in, which is exactly what they did. And the problem with that is that the boys that were backed in were not convincing by any stretch. Were not convincing. And I just feel like there's not enough selection pressure and it's selection integrity. And I've banged on about this for God knows how long, because there were players in that side against West Coast that didn't deserve to be there based on their performance the previous week. And I think it was a perfect opportunity to blood a couple of players and to make an example of a couple of others.
Yeah. Well, Cumming was the one, wasn't he? And that was the only one that sort of copped it from the selectors. This is a fine line, Macca, because we're talking about a team that had previously won 3 games on the trot against 3 finals contenders, particularly Geelong and Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have a absolute shock of in the next game. Is 1 week enough? Like a 1 week shocker? Is that enough to say, all right, we're making a stand, we're dropping 4, like regular players, or do you wait the next 1 more week and see what you get? Which way would you have gone?
To be totally honest, I don't know whether there were too many more players that I would have actually dropped for this game. I think you get one chance. Everybody can have a poor game. It all depends on how the poor game was achieved, whether it was through lack of effort or whether it was just one of those games where it just doesn't work for you. But Cumming, they obviously decided that his game, that he didn't work hard enough. I think that was probably fair enough in his case. Like Ben Keys, he hasn't been in the greatest of form, but he stayed in and he actually did kick 3 goals. Look, it's a fine line sometimes. Tex Walker is I see somebody mentions Tex. Tex is starting to become a worry. I'm not really sure that Tex at the moment, or certainly on recent form.
Let's not go through individuals. I want to talk conceptual at a higher level. The problem is that what you guys are saying is that on the back of one bad game the previous week, preceded by 3 solid wins, although the Melbourne game was a bit iffy and they did succumb a bit to pressure, 1 game's not enough. I look at it a little bit differently. I look at it from the point of view of, and I know the club doesn't because Matthew Nix has publicly come out and said as much, but I look at it as a body of work. And the body of work suggests to me, as we've already said this evening, that every time a club puts us under pressure, we have a lot of trouble countering it. And so I look at the situations where that has occurred, and that is the example that I'm trying to set. I don't care, yes, we had some good wins, but we dictated terms for the majority of those 3 wins. But in every important match that we've had, we have where pressure has been brought to us, we have struggled. And I think that's where the example needs to be made. Not just on one game the previous week. That's because looking at one game the previous week in isolation is simplistic. What about all the other games this season? What about last season's finals? We've got the same players that don't perform under those circumstances, and they've got a gold pass to selection. And I would be saying to some blokes, well, these are the games that you're going to be measured on, and if you can't measure up, then we're going to play somebody else.
Would you not argue though that the Melbourne and in particular the Geelong team, the boys did handle the heat from those teams?
I don't think they handled the heat against Melbourne.
What about Geelong?
I mean, they won the game, but they certainly were struggling under that pressure, and it was probably down to a couple of moments of individual talent.
The Geelong game?
No, we were all over them.
Yeah, I think they were pretty. I thought they brought their game for most of the time.
They brought their game, but their game isn't a high pressure game. It's a well structured game.
No, I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I just think that.
What about the game versus Hawthorn the previous week before the bye? We absolutely wilted under pressure that week.
We did.
But then you could argue they did respond against Geelong. I know you're saying they're not a high pressure team, but
they didn't respond. They won the next game. But I'm talking about specific circumstances where teams are beating us on the back of pressure.
Yeah.
And even though we beat Melbourne, when Melbourne really had their pressure ramped up, we really, really struggled against that team. It was only towards the end of the match that we really kind of, gained an ascendancy. So I think there was an opportunity for certain players to be just given a little reminder that we're not here for shits and giggles. We're here to atone for last season. And you mentioned Tex, Mac. I reckon that's a good example. Would have been a great opportunity to play Ludovic.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
I heard him on Sunday night. He said Ladowski. What'd you say? Was it Ladowski you said?
I don't know, big man. But if you were listening on Sunday night, you should have been on.
No, I listened to the Sunday night show. I listened. Wasn't there live?
Charlie Edwards is another one. I couldn't understand the Dowling one, but I was happy for him to get a game. But he played like a bloke who knew that he had to have a 40 possession blinder to have any chance of staying on the list, let alone in the team.
Agreed.
I just think there were opportunities to, and I think the matchup of Ball Ace was wrong again. I think Nick Murray should have been in the side. I don't think there's enough. I don't know what they talk about at selection, but I don't think they're talking about the right things. That's just my opinion.
Oh, I think it's clear that they don't go horses for courses because, if you're talking about Bolays, he wasn't a good matchup for Georgiades.
No,
but he's been in form. So they'd say, well, he's been in form, so he gets to play. So that's the way they look at it. And
which is so simplistic
against Waterman.
Yeah, but it was obvious. Actually, Fleing's got a very good point here, and that ball ace is actually a perfect example of that because if you get ball ace is good if they just bob the ball in high, and his form has been excellent, but a leading forward's going to get him every time because he hasn't got pace. So if you've got a forward in their team and West Coast do have a good forward, Murray would have been a much better choice because he has got more pace. So I have to agree with Fiend. And the Walker one, I would think that would have been a perfect example to bring in somebody like Ludwicki.
Not Ludwicki. What are you talking about? Not Ludwicki.
I just call him Noodle, and then everybody would be happy.
God, can't you say it right? It's Ludovic. God, Macca.
Ladowski?
Well, hand me for it, but Ludovic, yeah, okay. It would have been a good
Jesus, I didn't hear any of that.
He couldn't go watching Tex was terrible.
Macca speaking in tongues there. Jesus.
We're all good.
Well, the worst thing is
he gets excited and his microphone goes funny.
It is. It's the microphone's fault.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I think that some of the complacency and some of the lack of urgency comes down to a lack of pressure on the selection, and I think that is a real contributing factor.
I'm actually more for there be changes this week than last week, because I think that they'd probably. I actually think they'd earned the right to respond. That majority of that group, I think, being dropped was good because he was basically a late in for Miller anyway. I don't think they didn't intend to play him originally. But I think there were some signs that a few players probably need to. If it's not this week, then even next week. And obviously, it depends a lot on how they go against Gold Coast. But I reckon there are about 4, 5, even 6 players who would want to have a good game on the weekend. Otherwise, I think there's definitely going to be room for changes. And even I'm not even sure Knicks could probably even just justify keeping them in.
You've got more faith than I have.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, let's move on from that.
Though, to be fair, one of them's actually Milk, who I'm a big fan of. So
yeah,
I think there actually
Milk
are
on
quite
Sunday.
a few players. Did you? I didn't see that shit.
Absolutely hung him out to dry.
Yeah, I thought I watched most of the shot in here. That you just playing with me.
I'm just having you on, mate. We love.
No, he wasn't great though. But there were a few players
he
that
was
weren't
shit.
great. Cook, 2 bad games in a row.
But the problem, big man, the problem with that is that when we start playing that slow switch, kick down the line crap, it takes players like Cook and Taylor out of the game because they're no longer functioning. They're no longer they don't have any function in that sort of game style.
You're right. Totally right.
So it undermines their input into the game completely. And I think that's why Braden's been quiet the last few weeks because we've reverted to this long down the line bombing shit. And it doesn't bring him into it.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Macca's favourite segment. And I wonder what it's going to be this week, Macca. I don't know. What's it going to be? I don't know, Mac. You tell me.
Well, it's the match review committee today.
Hey.
Imagine that.
Yes, and I think everybody should have expected this. I mean, if you did watch that particular game, you would totally have expected this. And as this conversation progresses, we'll just introduce a new expression.
And I will actually just say, Macca, that after discussions this afternoon, I'm deciding that we're all in on the match review committee this week. I'm not going to have a Hall of Flame. We're just going to focus on this one because I feel exactly the same about it as you.
Yep. And if you watch the Collingwood game, if you had a situation where they had this massive brawl. Basically, what had happened is that Maynard had been hit by, what was his name, the guy that hit him? I can't remember his bloody name now, but he got 2 matches. He got 2 matches for strong. Long. And at the halftime siren went, and Maynard took off like an insane man. He just went running at 100 mile an hour. Now, the umpires were standing amongst the Gold Coast players, and Maynard has pushed the umpire out the way. He has physically laid hands on him and pushed him out the way so he could get to Long. And apparently Long has incidentally touched him as well in that thing, probably trying to get away from Maynard. And that ended up with one of the greatest brawls I've seen in AFL footy for a long, long time. And, there were so many players reported for that incident. But what did Maynard get for running at 100 mile an hour? You could see he was going to start a brawl and then pushing the umpire out the way. And what did he get? He got fined. Not one game. Now, Fred and I were talking about this afternoon. We're going to apply the Tex Walker rule to this situation. Now, if Tex Walker had done that and run in to start a brawl and push the umpire out the way, I don't think we'd ever see him play again. He'd get matches after matches. So this match review committee is just totally inefficient, totally biased. It can only be called bias. It's not honest. That is not an honest result. You can't have a situation where any player, because it's run in, because he's insanely angry, and push an umpire out the way so he can start a brawl. I mean, that's what I would think. A Tex Walker, he would get 4, 5, 6 games for that, no doubt about it. And so to apply the Tex Walker rule to it, yeah, that's what it would be. But see, it's a Collingwood player, Maynard, a fine. That is one of the biggest jokes of the year, and they don't have any credibility at all. Zero credibility.
I watched AFL 360 prior to coming on tonight, and I don't often agree with Ray Chamberlain, but I thought he presented his argument extremely well with regards to the umpire contact situation. And the mitigating circumstance, irrespective of whether you think that the contact by Maynard and Miller was incidental, the mitigating factor was that it was after the siren had sounded, and those players took it upon themselves, particularly Maynard, who said all he was interested in when the siren went was revenge, was to go and remonstrate. Whereas, as Ray Chamberlain rightly points out, their one job, once that siren goes, is to go in, have a drink and regroup. They've got no right to engage with the opposition after the siren's gone, and I don't know how Maynard or his team could have thought that that was a justifiable reason. And secondly, why the match review panel didn't actually view that negatively rather than as a contributing factor. There's been 43 cases of umpiring contact this season. 4 or 5 years ago, that number was at 10. And it doesn't matter what you think about the umpiring standards or whatever. The fact is that they are smaller people. They often get hit while they're running backwards, so they're off balance and not looking where they're going. There are females involved as well who, and this is not a gender thing, but they are just physically lighter again and more vulnerable on the ground. And because the AFL have hit these blokes with wet lettuce leaves, it's now become a thing that a player can weigh up. Am I going to take the risk of trying to use the umpire as a screen to get some separation from my opponent, at the risk of getting a fine because no one's getting suspended? Now, in my to my way of thinking, it's cut and dried. Under no circumstances, I mean, you can have accidental contact because accidental contact occurs in any sport. But what happened with Maynard and Miller and Long was not accidental. That was intentional and premeditated. There's been other circumstances where players have set screens and used the umpire coming back to try and get separation. That's intentional. That's not an accident. And I think where contact is not accidental, it should be an automatic suspension. Exactly. If a bloke can get a 50-metre penalty for dissent for pointing at a bloody scoreboard or saying what was that for, he can get a 50-metre penalty and which could be game changing. Why is it such a small leap for physical contact? It's like the two miles apart, and yet the penalties are in some respects less severe for contact with an umpire than it is with player dissent. And the whole point of having that player dissent rule was to respect the umpires. The AFL have come off they've undermined themselves here because they are not holding the line when it comes to protecting umpires and elevating the umpires to a protected entity on the field. And I don't understand why that is, Macca.
Look, as I said, if you apply the Tex Walker rule to it, and not a Collingwood player, you could bet that Walker would have got suspended. I'm sure of that.
100%.
That's what we say. We were playing the Tex Walker rule. And because he would have gone up to the game. There's no doubt about it. And look, you just cannot tolerate that a player can run in because he wants to start a brawl and push an umpire out the way. The very fact that he's running in to start a brawl, to me, it should be worth several games for a start. Then to touch an umpire, that's probably another 5 or 6 to push him out the way just for that to start a brawl. And, after Maynard says, having got off with a fine, I wasn't really after to get the umpire. I was after, I just wanted to get even. And, and
he said basically, if I didn't brush him out of the way, I would have knocked him over. As if that's a defence.
Yes, seriously, it's they just the AFL come out of this so badly. This comes out so badly because the umpires treated with zero respect in this whole situation, and secondly, the fact that Maynard's announced that he was going to start a brawl to get even, and they don't even get suspended for that. I mean, the whole thing is just beyond belief. And to me,
they got $5,000 fines.
Mm.
I mean, that's a pittance.
I just can't.
I was going to say the AFL's the whole thing is the message they put out there as well. We don't have the ability to make these suspensions because the rules aren't there in place to do that. We know if that was a Crows player that they would have found a way. They would have found a loophole to make that a week or 2 or 3 or 4 whatever. So don't bullshit us AFL. We know, and also in addition to that, and I'm no Port Adelaide fanboy, but Ken Hinkley gets $20,000 for doing an airplane's bloody gesture, and yet this $5,000 for this. Where does it make sense?
Exactly.
What a very good point. It's 20 grand he got for that. And he's got $5,000 for bloody pushing up.
Macca, just put your voice down because you keep breaking up when you talk loudly.
Sorry, I'm getting a little bit agitated because it really is. It's one of the worst things I have seen on a footy field. Really, at AFL level, it's one of the worst things I've seen, and it's been treated as if it was a nothing.
And there's more. There's more consistency as well. Blake Hardwick got a fine for a gut punch against Toby Green. Now, I don't think there was much difference between what Blake Hardwick did and what Riley Thilthorpe did. Yet Thilthorpe got a week. There was an incident during the round, and I can't remember who the player was, where someone got pushed into a marking contest. Nothing. Not even cited. Tex got a week for it.
Well, there was the LDU one into Butters.
Well, the irony of it is actually this week that Whitfield got concussion, and he got concussion because Darcy was pushed by a GWS player, and as he was stumbling forward, his elbow has caught Whitfield and knocked him and given him concussion, and he's missing a week for it. So on what happened to the Crows, that's got to be a suspension, doesn't it?
So, Michael Christian's been in this chair for too long, in my opinion. And in my opinion, Michael Christian has far too... This is a position that is more than a one-person situation, in my opinion. It shouldn't be up to one person, Michael Christian, to decide where the lines are in terms of suspensions and fines and citing and all the rest of it. And secondly, it is blatantly obvious that Michael Christian has different attitudes towards different sides. It's blatantly obvious.
Yes.
Blatantly obvious. And in my opinion, if they want a fair and reasonable tribunal system, it has to be completely independent. It has to be given clear guidelines, and it can't be open to interference. So it doesn't need to be manned by football people. Wasn't it ages ago? Wasn't it in the SANFL that we had a QC in charge of our tribunal?
Yes, we did.
A far fairer, and look, even QCs are human, but a far fairer system where you've got an independent person making these decisions. Michael Christian has shown himself to be less than independent, less than balanced, and completely inconsistent with outcomes when it comes to the match review panel. They call it a panel. It's not even a bloody panel.
It's not. It's a joke. It's ever since Gil McLachlan ceased to be in charge of the AFL.
Gil was just as bad.
I just think that it's deteriorated even more since then.
Well, it has, but I don't think Gil was that great either. Gil was a deal maker.
He was a deal maker, a very good deal maker. And I'm not saying he was the greatest CEO either, but I don't think he's as bad as this bloke by a long chalk. And the people that he's got working for him, there are so many that should be replaced. And I'm reading in the chat there's a couple they're talking that will be replaced at the end of the year, and this bloke will be one of them. So I just hope that is the case.
That's just chatter and speculation.
Well, you can only hope, can't you? Because as you say, there is no doubt there are different rules for different clubs, and we're on the low side. We're on the bottom ones where you just kick them because they're down there. I mean, whereas if you're a Collingwood, no, you've got a different set of rules applied to you.
The trouble is, big man, I guess you wonder where the accountability sits for these people.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you can blame the one guy because that's Christian. Yeah, he doesn't seem to cop any heat at all.
Well, because where would that heat come from?
Well, barely comes from the media. Every so often he might get a clip, but apart from that, he gets off pretty much scot-free. And the AFL don't seem to be too upset with the job he's doing, even though sometimes his decisions are overturned by the tribunal. I think he's a fraud. He's just he's been in the job for far too long for doing something he doesn't do a particularly good job. The fines and suspensions handed out and whatnot are incredibly inconsistent from not just between teams, but from incident to incident. Even incidents that come across as almost identical get judged differently. And a lot of that is depending on which team did it and which team doesn't. I mean, look, as a Crow supporter, we're particularly affected by this because it's ironic. I don't think we're a particularly thuggish team. In fact, I wish we had a bit more shit in us, if anything. And yeah, if you look at the amount of suspensions we've copped,
I know
for incidental things or like very light things that aren't punished, for other teams. We talked about the Tex one being us. We talked that the Tex push. I saw that repeated multiple times in the only the round after, let alone since then. Or the Ginnivan, punch, bloody jumper punching a guy on the ground, and yet still thought does the little clip, and that's It doesn't make any sense, and the only way we can we can look at it as Crows fans, having experienced it for so long now, is that there's an absolute bias there, and it affects our enjoyment of the game, and it affects our performance as well as a team. So, I got no time for Christian. I think he's as a Collingwood, he was a shit commentator. He's even shitter in this role as a match review person. So, for all I could care, he can retire anytime he wants.
Yeah. Again, my issue is, where does that come from? Like, who's holding Michael Christian accountable? The AFL continue to support the MRP, which I guess they have to, but then, what's the mechanism to review the match review committee? Not so much in terms of how it functions, but who the actual person is. Who does Michael Christian sit down at the end of the year and have his bloody annual review with? Like, I don't know. So anyway, good Hall of Flame, Macca. I agree. I think the officiating of the game is the worst that it's been since the AFL came into existence. So back in 87, 88.
I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, they came out with this ridiculous comment that it's never been better. And I'm in the same camp as you. I don't think it's ever been worse. It's, and also the people that run the game with the laws they're making as well, like the stand rule. And they were discussing on one of the shows this week, which I saw the incident, which was just insanity, where the stand, the umpire called stand, and somebody who's nowhere near the guy with the ball. He's about, and he's on the side or backwards or something. He's not in the play, but he had to stand still, and it just shows we've reached stupidity point. That is stupidity. It's not football. It's stupidity, and that's stupid. That stupidity is coming from stupid people above it. I mean, the umpires administer whatever rule they're given or try to, but it's absolute stupidity. And I don't think we've ever had a weaker set of people running the game than what we've got at the moment.
Well, I think it's a little bit more sinister than that, Macca, because I've said for a long time that the VFL or the AFL seem to be an organisation that just has a particular desire to control outcomes to the nth degree, and so they will manipulate situations and outcomes and rules and circumstances. I mean, what other sport in the world has a situation where the formula for free agency compensation is not public knowledge?
That's a disgrace. That is an absolute disgrace.
What other professional sport operates under such an arbitrary situation where a club does not even know where it stands, and where the AFL, where the governing body can change draft rules on the fly? Now, we all know that clubs plan 2, 3, 4 years in advance when it comes to draft and list management and all the rest of it. And you do all that planning, and then 6 months out from a trade period, the rules change. And all your stuff goes up in smoke, and all of a sudden you're in a disadvantaged situation. I mean, there are just so many examples of the arbitrary nature of the way that our sport is administered, from the top down, even to the way the rules are written and the way the poor umpires have to try and interpret rules all the time. It's a bloody mess, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, the AFL Commission, which replaced the NFL Commission, which was an independent governing body of Australian rules football, the AFL Commission, I've not ever heard a peep from them with regards to holding anyone at the AFL to account. They should be separate bodies. I've not ever heard a peep from anyone at the Commission with regards to the performance of anyone in AFL House.
There's been one exception to that, that was Laura Kane, who made a couple of bad boo-boos and got demoted.
Yeah, but that was a PR exercise, Mac.
I think so.
The thing is that the AFL self-governs, and we're dealing with a national sport that's been monopolised by one league, the VFL, to the detriment of the sport as a whole. And you only have to look, and I know that there are timing differences, but you only have to look at the media rights deal that the NRL struck today. $730 billion media deal by the NRL, which is $200 billion more than the AFL's deal, albeit the AFL's deal was struck a few years ago. But if you have a look at how the NRL, which I would suggest, and this is a bias view, but outside of Queensland and Sydney, I don't think the NRL is a particularly marketable package on a week-to-week basis.
I agree.
But they maximise their product. They have their game in Las Vegas. They have State of Origin, which is a fantastic product. They have international games, which is good. They were the first with their Magic Round and all that sort of stuff. They don't fart ass around with opening rounds and all the rest of it. That their fixturing is good. They don't have any games that overlap at all, so you can watch every game of NRL uninterrupted live every week. That's a sport that is maximising its product. And whereas the AFL, I believe, are manipulating the sport to try and achieve outcomes that are based on, fairy tale finishes and this year's flavour of the month team and, all that sort of garbage, instead of just running a bona fide professional league and letting the sport talk for itself in terms of ratings and attendance.
Yeah, I think that last comment you made is what should be the case. It isn't, but that's what it should be.
Well, and the thing is, Mac, where does that pressure come from? Like, big man, where does that pressure come from? Like I said, the AFL is a self-governing league and it's the highest level of administration of Australian rules football in the country.
It just makes you wonder. I don't know who makes these decisions, because some of them are so illogical, like the opening round, for example. I mean, just absolutely insanity. And but then this year adding to opening round with the argument being that it was to grow the game in the north. So we have Collingwood playing at the same time this year because
we had to have because we had to have a game in Victoria because the poor old Victorians just couldn't miss out.
I mean, it immediately just shoots them up the arse for what the whole thing's about. And so they just look absolutely so stupid. And
well, I actually had I had 2 mini flames, and one of them was that's the scheduling. Like,
yeah,
that was I had that one.
So even in a bye, and it happened again this week. So we had 9 games this week. So and it still doesn't explain it, but it happened. But it also happened to the byes, but there's less games to cover the whole weekend. We've managed to have 2 games on a Sunday still overlap.
Yep.
I could not believe it. I was talking about that one to Finn this afternoon. I wanted to throw that in as well, and he said, "No, let's talk about the big one." But anyhow, that you've raised that one, and I'm glad you have because of the situation. They started at something like 3:15 or something like that, something ridiculous. And and why didn't they just start at 1:30? They actually could have squeezed 3 games in instead of having to double up on the Friday night. Just another fiasco. They are full of fiascos, and they think they're doing a great job. They got no idea. No idea.
The other problem with the double up on the Friday night is that the second game, the later game, which was ours this week, gets absolute shit coverage. It's actual shit coverage. They covered it from Melbourne. There was no post-match whatsoever. So the prime Friday night gets the whole lead-in and the whole preview, and, there's a reward for having a Friday night game. You get big coverage, in the rooms after the game, the whole analysis, all the rest of it. The second game that's on a little bit later get nothing.
There shouldn't be 2 Friday night games.
No, of course there shouldn't be. Of course there shouldn't be.
But to have a whole Sunday where there's like about a 6-hour window, and you had them overlap and really overlap too, basically halfway through the first game. Yeah. It is it's mind-boggling, but this is the same league that brought in the bloody lasso rule only to stuff it up because now any incidental contact off the leg is deemed a disposal, and half the time they review it anyway. So it slows the game down more when it was supposed to speed up the game. It is ridiculous.
And this is my point, big man, about the AFL wanting to control every outcome, and they want to manage situation to the nth degree. They couldn't just implement the last touch rule as it was in the SANFL, which has worked fine for years, where if it's a legitimate disposal, then it's last touch, and if it's incidental or rolls out or gets carried out, then it's throwing. Easy, simple, done.
Yeah, it is so simple. It is so simple.
Because the whole intent of that, apart from speeding the game up, was to remove the whole deliberate out of bounds disaster as well. So why are you applying it to incidental situations, which are never going to be deliberate out of bounds because they wouldn't have been under the old system? So they're irrelevant. It's an incidental situations. You're only looking at bona fide disposals, kicks or handballs, or in Riley O'Brien's case, headers.
You know, the thing that amazes me about it, though, Feen, is that I think everybody in the footy fraternity and community thinks the same way as you just stated it then, and they do it on the TV shows. They do it during the game, whatever. Why don't the AFL just change it? Why don't they just change it with common sense? Why are they so opposed to not doing it?
But that's my point, Macca. It's the AFL is self-administered. There's no governing body anymore. There's the AFL. As soon as the NFL, which was the National Football League, or the NFA, what was it? National Football Commission? I don't know what it was. NFC maybe? I don't know. The national one, which was a completely independent body that oversaw all the different leagues around the country and was responsible for the broad charter of the game of Australian rules football. As soon as that was wound up, then that was the end. That was it. The game was lost in terms of governance at that point, because it became the AFC, the AFL Commission, basically. And I've not ever heard the AFL Commission come out on anything of any note, and the game is just left to run and be administered by the AFL, and that includes state leagues, it includes country leagues, community leagues, the whole bloody lot, junior development, the whole lot is now on the auspices of the AFL. And let's not make any bones about the fact that the AFL is the VFL. So yes. We're in a situation now. Yeah, we're in a situation now where all our junior leagues, all our country leagues, all our amateur leagues are all administered by the VFL. And we have tacitly sat by and allowed that to happen because of money. And we're now reaping what we're sowing. And look, if a sport like the NRL can garner the same amount of media interest as the AFL, then there's something wrong. Because rugby league, yes, it's an international sport, but it's only played in 2 states at a professional level. Here, Melbourne Storm is just a contrived, relocated thing. And the rest of the country play Australian rules football. And to me, there's something wrong with our sport and the way that it's administered and structured at the moment if we can't be the number one ticket in town. And at the moment, we're not the number one ticket in town. And how many billions of dollars have we spent in Queensland and New South Wales? How many billions of dollars have we wasted up there for the NRL to be in the best position it's ever been in?
I think it's 600 million for each of the 2 teams. I think.
That'd be bloody more than 600 million.
No, for each of the 2 teams.
There's 4 teams.
Yeah. I'm only talking about Gold Coast and GWS.
There's 4 teams. So the spend started with Sydney. Yes,
I haven't counted Sydney or Brisbane. No.
And the only reason Sydney's a team is because South Melbourne were bankrupt, and the only way they could, try and save their asses is to move interstate.
Well, actually, when you look at it, the only teams that have actually survived in going, the additional teams that they've added, are the ones that are really former VFL clubs that have got some support back in Victoria, and that way when they've moved it to Sydney or to Brisbane, and they also got backers as well at that particular time as well. It meant that it didn't cost as much. But with these new clubs, nobody's backing them other than the AFL. So it's costing them. And I mean, putting a team into Western Sydney where nobody goes, you've got to have crowds of 11 or 12,000 people at best. I mean, and you spend hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
And again, there's no accountability.
Yeah.
No, there isn't. No, there isn't.
Look, at the end of the day, if they can just bring AFLX back, I think that will solve every problem, wouldn't it?
I don't understand why they ever took it away. It was the best thing that ever happened, big man.
Oh yeah, that was terrific.
I still remember that photo of Gil next to the bloody dancers and the clown person. Oh my god.
It was so cringe.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
actually,
anyway.
is it right if I chuck in another quick flame?
Oh, why not? You might as well just take over
Oh.
the show, big man.
That's what I tend to do. I tend to do that anyway. So I'm getting really annoyed. And this has actually been a bugbear of mine for a while. Of whenever there's a free kick paid against, particularly like holding the ball, it's the most prevalent. Sorry.
Relevant.
Yeah, I missed my words.
Is that like Ludowiki?
Yeah, something like that. Prevalent.
No, I think so whenever there's a holding the ball, if you notice how often now, and it constantly happens week in, week out, the player who receives the free will then shove the opposition player into the ground. There's like an exclamation mark. We see it all the time, yeah?
Yeah.
They'll tackle them, hold the ball, and then they'll give them a big shove. And sometimes they'll shove their bloody face into the dirt. And there's nothing done about it. Now, this is twofold. One, Sam Berry got a free kick against him, I think it was last year or the year before, for doing that exact thing. So it looked like they were going to start punishing it, and they never actually ended up following on from that. It's been rampant. It's increased year on year. The second one is, why is the AFL actually allowing this? Because this is the exact sort of thing that will flow on, and I'm sure it is flowing on into lower leagues and suburban footy and whatnot, and kids footy. And it's justified because the AFL allow it themselves. It's bullshit behaviour. It is borderline thuggery, and
well, you know
it's
what it is.
Completely unnecessary.
You know what it is. It should fall under the taunting rule because essentially it's a taunt. Essentially, it's a taunt, right? It's basically, ha, sucked in, I caught you.
Yeah.
Push you into the dirt,
Big
which
shove.
is no different to any other taunt, right? And there's a rule against it, and it's just not enforced.
Yep. Nick Murray had it happen to him a few weeks ago, and he got his actual face planted into the dirt, and there was no free hands, not even a word from the umpire, nothing. So and we're just allowing this. And look, yeah, it might seem like a minor thing, but I don't like it at all. I think it's bullshit that's crept into the game more and more. And as I said, it's gonna permeate through the lower leagues as well in kids footy. So just gonna chuck it out there because I'm sick of seeing that all the time. We do it, but everyone does it.
Everyone does it. I think, and we do it because everyone else does it because we do it. It's a vicious circle. And if it was administered correctly at the beginning, then no one would do it. It's the same as umpire contact and every other bloody thing. And I think that raises probably a slightly bigger point with regards to, again, the amount of resources that are devoted to promoting the game versus the amount of resources that are promoted to or devoted to administering the game. There's one person in charge of the coaching staff, the umpiring staff. One person in charge of that. Umpiring is probably the most, apart from the teams and the players themselves, umpiring is probably the most important part of the game in terms of credibility and consistency, and yet the umpires are not full-time, and we've got one bloke in charge of it who's probably off having lunch half the time. Is probably a part-time job.
Yep, you're exactly right, mate.
So it's like the AFL just aren't serious about running a professional league. What they're serious about, and we've said this for a while, what they're serious about is running an entertainment business. And and unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in.
Yeah, we take it seriously as pundits and supporters and whatnot, but it is frustrating because it's so fabricated, it's so inconsistent, and there's really not a whole lot of legitimacy to it outside of what maybe the draft, and even in the draft's been compromised now. And yeah, it is dispiriting to know how much is actually wrong with this league and this sport and the AFL allow it to happen, because at the end of the day, they keep pulling record numbers and attendances, so it doesn't bother them.
Because they're lucky that they're administering the most popular sport in the country, and we just love the game and we'll support regardless. No one will stand on principle and not attend games because we just love the game too much. It's so much a part of our psyche, and the AFL are profiting from that. And I just realised that the whole time I've had the weekend wrap thing on instead of Tuesday Night Live.
You're just as bad, mate, as the AFL.
There we go. Tuesday Night Live. There we go. Idiot. Never
Doesn't
mind.
matter. Doesn't matter. No, you're quite right, Glenn. They're just not really worried about the morals of the whole thing. It's just as long as they think they're doing a good job, they don't really. You raised a point earlier. Who judges them, if anybody? Who judges them? Nobody, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of anyone.
I mean, the guy at the top, he probably is supposed to judge the ones below him, etc., as you go down the chart. But the guy at the top's no good either. So
Yeah, Jad says the media judges them, but the media are on the hook as well. I mean, how many times does Stephen Rowe get pulled back into line by Ian Shuttleworth? How many times do we see a shunning or a turnover of journalists that all of a sudden are out of favour? There's been journalists that were right at the head of the queue a few years ago that are now persona non gratas, and other sycophants have come in to take their place. And the media hasn't got any sort of leverage to do anything anyway.
Even the text, suspension, yes, it didn't help that, O'Sullivan was down for a bit longer than, you would have liked, but the way in which that got media coverage and Kane Corns and others, David King maybe as well, pointed out that the AFL weren't like this, and they kept showing up on that. Compared to other incidents that followed where they just did not cover it at all, you wouldn't even know what happened if you didn't watch the game. I have no doubt that influenced the decision to suspend Tex.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. And you were saying about the media thing. Eddie Maguire, and I'm not saying he does anything wrong, but I have no doubt he seems to have, I'm not saying he has, he seems to have a hotline to the AFL and able to make suggestions to them. And of course, none of them are unfavourable to Collingwood, but I don't know whether there may be other media people who have that capacity, but I do, on the way Eddie talks, I do think that, that's only my opinion, but that he appears to have a direct line to them. And
well, Maguire's got a massive opinion of himself, and let's be honest, he was a journalist on Channel fucking 10, and he was lucky enough to land the gig on the Footy Show and did a very, very good job of that, and then rose up the ranks with Channel 9 and whatnot, and was a CEO or general manager or president or whatever of Collingwood. And good luck to Eddie Maguire for doing everything he possibly can, A, for his footy club that he loves, and B, to get his ideas and opinions heard at AFL House. The problem isn't that Eddie Maguire has those opinions and expresses those views and calls the AFL, is that they listen to him to a greater extent than the 17 other clubs.
That's my point.
It's not Eddie's fault. It's the weakest piss blokes at the AFL who give Eddie the platform. Now, Eddie's done it. I don't have anything against Eddie Maguire. I don't agree with everything that he says, and I think he can be extremely biased at times, and also, very, very heavily lean toward Victorian football in a national situation. But I don't begrudge him that, because he's entitled to have those opinions and have those views. The problem is that there's no like the AFL don't rise above that and say, well, yes, Eddie, that's very good. We'll take that under advisement. Go back and do your show. All of a sudden he's put on committees and he's given responsibilities and all the rest of it that he never should be. And again, this is this self-governing boys' club crap that's going on in VFL football that unfortunately also happens to govern the whole sport in the country.
No doubt about it. And as you say, at the end of the day, who's judging it all? Nobody, seemingly.
Well, the only time it'll start getting judged, and that's the same as any sport or any venture, is when the numbers no longer add up. And unfortunately, we're a long, long way from that. Because people will keep turning it on and people will keep turning up. And we'll whinge and bitch and moan and carry on about it, but we'll continue to turn up.
Well, that's true. That is true.
So, that's really the only pressure that's going to be put on it.
Yeah, and the people love their footy, so it's not going to happen, please.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We keep turning up.
Mm.
So, it's an entertainment industry, unfortunately. It's not a professional league. And it's a shame. It's a real shame.
Well, I blame it on Big Man because he keeps going.
Yeah,
Thanks,
why don't you
Macca.
just stop turning up, Big Man?
I know, right?
God. All right.
Sorry, mate.
Let's move on. There are a couple of little bits of scuttlebutt during the week about the Crows. Caroline Wilson dragged her sorry self onto the TV screens, and we're all worse off for it.
Fiend.
What?
Go on, carry on. I had a vision of it as well.
No, you might have had I said sorry self.
Yeah, go on.
Like Eddie Maguire, I'm entitled to use my platform to express my personal opinions. Anyway, Caro comes on and reckons that what she reckons is that Zach Bailey is going to stay at Brisbane. Big Man, thoughts?
Well, I tend to have a rule with these things, and that's if it's bad news and it's related to the Crows, it's probably true. So as much as I'd like to say, oh no, Caro's got no idea and all that, when this sort of news come out, and I'm sure it'll probably be verified within the week from other sources, that it probably is true. And I know you don't agree, boss, but I think this is what's happened. I think that unfortunately with Lachie Neale leaving Brisbane, it's allowed them to, more salary, and they've upped the offer, and Bailey's played it pretty well. He's got more money now and he gets to stay at Brisbane. So I hope it's not true, because I think it would be a really big get for us. But so it's very disappointing to actually hear this. And yeah, I suspect it is actually the case, which is unfortunate. Hasn't been a great couple of weeks for the Crows, has it?
Well, I don't know whether it is true or not, but one thing is factual, that they have upped their offer. Now, I don't know how much they've opted up it by, but I think you did right. The fact that Lachie Neale is, they're almost pushing Lachie Neale out the door. When you hear the coach talking about it, I mean, I love him, but we're not standing on his way. We think if he has to go, he has to go. I mean, normally somebody Lachie Neale's calibre, who's in great form at the moment, you'd hang on to them. But no, they're almost pushing him out the door, and I think that will be so they can make a bigger offer. And I do fear that we won't get him for that reason.
Well, the quote was from Caro, I believe he's going to stay at Brisbane. I'm close to calling it. I think Brisbane want an answer from Zach Bailey within a fortnight. They need to get the ducks in a row, and they're pretty resigned now to losing Lachie Neale. They've increased their offer to Bailey about a week or two ago. Adelaide are offering $10 million over 7 years. The Brisbane deal is as long in length. It was around 1.1, but I reckon it's closer now to 1.2, which would make it 8.4. I think Zach Bailey is thinking probably the Lions are home for him.
Was it a 6 or 7 year deal? I thought that was a 6 year deal, wasn't it?
7, according to this.
Well, we were supposed to be offering 20. Sorry, what was it? 10 million over 6, which is
10 million
1.6.
over 7.
Was it 7? Oh, okay. Oh, for that's some reason we had always had 6 in my mind. But if it is over 7, that makes the difference much, much smaller. And if that's the case, then I fear for the worst.
Yeah, I think, we're obviously going to find out in the next fortnight by the sounds of it. Because if I would say that that's Brisbane's last offer. And look, Zach Bailey has always said that his first preference is to stay at Brisbane, but he was just resigned to the fact that they weren't going to be able to get close to the money that was being offered. But if Brisbane now, with a Lachie Neale situation, are able to free up space to get close to the Adelaide offer, then I'm not surprised that Zach Bailey would stay.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And I said at the start of the season that I would hate for him to leave and go to a different club. I think that would be a real failure of us. But if he was to stay at Brisbane, then it's not so much you can do about it. That's his decision. Why would you want to leave? Brisbane, good place, great club. They're still in the window. Obviously it's and that's and I don't want to come across like I didn't want him and whatnot. I think that's it's really disappointing. As much as I didn't think he was going to entirely fix our problem, he certainly adds a lot to it. Would have added a lot to the team. But I'm just saying, like, it is hard to get players out of clubs. It's much harder than you think, particularly the good players. So as long as he's not going to any other club, then it's not the biggest loss. And hopefully we can repurpose that money and do something with it on the other end. But yeah, it's hard not to be flat because I think we all had not long ago, a few weeks ago, probably thought he actually was coming.
Well, it is a loss if he doesn't come, because the one thing that separates us from the really, really top side is our midfield. We've got Dawson, and after that we've got good workers, but not stars. I'm not saying he is one of the great stars of the competition, but he is another level above. And he's a level above what we've got. And we don't need just him. We need probably 2 players like him to be a side that can consistently challenge for a premiership. Because if we have a genuine weakness in our side, it is we don't have the same quality midfielder as the top 3 or 4 teams. And that's our one weakness, in my opinion.
Yeah. And look, it is a shame because I think we all acknowledge that we do need more class running through there, even though he's not an out-and-out midfielder. He is capable in there, and we know what he can do in front of goals. It's frustrating because I think there is actually, a lot to offer in terms of, obviously we've got the money to offer. We're a club that's clearly in some sort of window, at least, it's playing finals, so you're not going to a cellar door or anything. And the playing group that we have has been able to retain, or we've pretty much retained the same playing group for a long time now. We don't have many players leaving, which suggests to me that we've got some pretty good in terms of the team morale and culture here. It's not bad at all. So it's frustrating that we can't seem just to get that signature on the line when it comes to these big dogs. It's frustrating because I think we would actually have quite a lot to offer these players, but for whatever reason we can't land them, and I'm sure we'll cop it from the media again for doing that. And I wonder what has to change for us to finally do it. We hope with Roughhead coming in, that might be one of the reasons we get more players, but obviously in this case, it probably hasn't happened.
Well, we certainly need more class in our midfield, and with the side we've got, I can't see us and with the coach we've got, I can't see us winning the flag. Whether a better coach could squeeze a bit more out of our midfield, I don't know. But by the same token, it's so much better if you do have, in the case of Brisbane, they've probably got 3 or 4 classy players rolling through their midfield. If you've got that, it gives you every chance of contending for a flag. As a genuine contender. Whereas we had to get there. We saw what happened last year when we had the finals. Midfielders, we got slaughtered in the midfield in both our finals, and we just couldn't win the game. And you can't. If you're up against a classy midfield that's really firing, you can't win. And that's our weakness.
Yeah, it's interesting. Doesn't look like we're in the Lachie Neale race, although by all rights we should be, but it seems like he wants to move to Victoria for whatever reason. I suspect that maybe his ex-wife might also move to Melbourne for the influencer opportunities that might be available to her there. Comparable to
the current miss, not the current missus, but the actual ex one.
Yes.
Okay. That whole situation's weird with Neil, and I agree he'd be a pretty good fit for us, even though it's more of a short-term play.
Mm.
But
if you got a flag, you don't care how short it is.
Yeah, I mean, as like I said, this is the frustration though, because we're actually a pretty good destination to head to. For anyone, if you want to play midfield, we certainly haven't got spots filled. If you're good enough, you'll bloody get in there and play full-time midfield. We've got a new facility coming in. We're playing finals now, quite on the regular, and obviously, as I said, we've got the money to burn. So it's like, what else can we do now at this point? Is it is it a Knicks problem? Is it the Adelaide factor again? Even with gather round and stuff, is there still stigma about coming to Adelaide? Because it's not like Port landing big fishes either.
No, that's right. Port haven't landed anyone of any note either. Let's be honest.
They haven't.
Like, I look at Petrarca, and I'm sure he's enjoying himself on the Gold Coast, but he'd be playing better footy and enjoying his footy more playing with us. Hopefully I haven't mozzed this for the weekend against them now, but it's just frustrating because I think as in terms of if you're a midfielder and you want to get a big payday and play finals footy, you could do a lot worse than playing for the Crows. So I'm not sure what else we can offer these players now.
Well, and even players that are ex-South Australian, it's difficult to lure them back because we're a small market team, and I've said for a long time that as a small market team, we need to go about our list building differently, and we need to be prepared to pay heavy overs to even have a chance with some of these players, and even then, it's very, very difficult. But Matthew Nicks made a decision 2 or 3 years ago that we were done with the draft and we were going to top up the squad with trades, and some have been good, Dawson, Rankin, obviously, but some have been probably disappointing, Cumming and Peatling to a lesser degree. A and B probably not really what we needed at the time. You wonder what we could have done with that 15 pick. So I don't know whether we're innovative enough at the moment with the way we go about building our list, and I don't know whether we should redirect some of our recruiting dollars into player development dollars at local level to build a bit more of an emotional tie to the Crows within the state, and have pathways for players post-football that make it a little bit more attractive and lucrative for players to stay here. Because I think we're just playing by the generic handbook, and I don't think that works for smaller markets. Do you, Mac?
No, I think that's a good summary there, Pete. And it is a smaller market, and Victoria's got the big market there, and they talk about the big Victorian clubs and that. I think we just have to be a little bit smarter. I mean, I think our new facilities will help, but by the same token, and so that's we've got to really promote that. But I think the other thing you said, which was pretty good, I think that one way to really recruit a player is that if they come here to play footy, that there is a good pathway after that, so that they don't play footy and all of a sudden they become nobody and they can't earn good money. If you can somehow work out, and I don't know what it could be, but use our greatest supporters to help in this particular sense, companies, etc., to provide perhaps a future for them after footy. That's also would be a very important point. But the hard part, it seems to me, just to get him here in the first place. And I'm sure once you get him here, like Dawson, we got him here, and look at how he's grown and developed, and he's here forever. So we just need to get him here, and we'll be okay. It's getting him here, which is the hard part.
I'll just, and also another quick thing, boss. Sorry, that even though we've got a massive supporter base for considering the small, relatively small size of South Australia and Adelaide in particular, it's amazing how many players that come through the system that in the under-18 system aren't Crows fans or even Power fans. They're fans of other clubs.
Yeah.
So you don't actually. So a lot of them, even like recent examples, Dyson Sharp, for instance. Will Day was a Hawthorn fan. These guys don't have that personal attachment. It helps when you get guys like Dawson, A&B, Rankin, who were Crows fans growing up. A lot of them aren't, and that's I think even that sort of has an impact. And
well,
it's a small
the
thing,
question.
but I think it's a thing.
Begs the question too: how many non-South Australian kids grow up as Crows supporters? Because there's a hell of a lot of South Australian kids that grow up as Victorian team supporters, or even Suns or Giants for that matter.
Well, Archie was one, and he came here. It doesn't happen very often.
So no. I mean, kids growing up in Victoria. For South Australian teams.
No, but Archie was. I mean, I'm just saying Archie was WA, but so he wasn't South Australian.
Yeah,
he's still. He was a Crow supporter though.
Yeah, well, there was a family tie with the Archies, wasn't there? Anyway, I think we need to be more innovative. I think we need to be very good at our targeting. I think we need to have a bigger presence in regional Victoria. I think we need to get involved at Ballarat and Bendigo and Portland and like those border regions, and have a much greater presence through there. And I just think we need to. We can't just rely on luck, because we've had probably 2 quality midfielders come through the draft system that are South Australian in the last 5 or 6 years or 10 years, Rankin and as it turns out, Geordie Dawson, although he wasn't, neither of those were even identified as midfielders when they were drafted. We've just got to pick them out and develop them and get them into our system somehow. Do you think, big man, that there's a case for the Adelaide clubs, and I can't speak for the WA clubs, but do you think there's a good case for the Adelaide clubs to approach the AFL to have our own proper development academies like the Northern States?
I think the fact that AFL is such a the number one sport here is that the AFL wouldn't be interested in that, because it doesn't benefit them. It only benefit the clubs themselves. So I don't think they'd entertain it. Mac?
No, I'm with you. I think there is a case. For it, and I think the very fact of the performance of what has happened in the Northern States in particular, it just shows the advantages of having it. They've got that unnatural advantage. And we might have to make it a specialty type thing. We may have to perhaps one where we concentrate on Indigenous players, but not just one player. Just have the capacity to have maybe an academy with 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 or whatever young Aboriginal kids, and
I don't think it just needs to be Indigenous. I just think it needs to be in general.
Well, definitely in general would be preferable, but I'm thinking they'll probably knock us back. But if we, I've been thinking that for a while, that if we, when the Indigenous kids crack it, they can be very, very good, very, very good. And you watch Wanganeen Millera, you just never know. You just might uncover a Wanganeen Millera, and
well, we did uncover an Wanganeen Millera, and then we didn't fucking draft him. He was in our NGA.
Who was that?
Wanganeen Millera.
Was he? He was in our NGA.
Yes.
Bloody hell, thing.
He was right there.
Somebody said he didn't qualify though.
No, but he was right there, and we had the opportunity to draft him. Like, not under any academy rules, but he went at what, 10 or 11 or something like that? We had a pick
11.
to get him, and we picked someone else.
Shelley.
Well, in hindsight, that wasn't too clever, was it?
Oh.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I look. I'd love to have an academy, and where we could actually have some players that we could, and I think that probably not just ourselves. I think that every club should be entitled to have it if the Northern States have got it. Why shouldn't they?
Well,
They're
my reasoning for bringing it up is because of the disparity in the markets, right? You've got 12 teams in Victoria, so there's a massive range of options for a player that wants to play in Victoria. And secondly, Victoria obviously being the hub of football, there's a concentration of media opportunities and other sport-related opportunities that just don't exist in the other states. So clearly there needs to be some offset to avoid a concentration of players from other states ending up in Victoria. Now, I understand that it's not in the Victorian club's interest for that to happen, but certainly from the point of view of having a more even distribution of talent across the country, and a more level playing field in terms of opportunities to have certain players. Like, because I can't think of a reason. Like, we just saw Petraka come down here, who was obviously interested enough in our offer to come down, but it turns out that it wasn't just about the money. It was also about lifestyle and other opportunities that were available on the Gold Coast that weren't available in Adelaide, supposedly. So it's not like we have the money. It's not a situation of money. It's a situation of what else can we offer these players. What else can we, and I don't think enough has been done. We can't just rely on great facilities and a good culture. It's not going to get us over the line.
No,
there needs to be a specific program designed so that when a player comes to interview here, or when we approach a player, we can say, and it needs to be all above board. Doesn't need to be brown paper bags like Geelong, but there needs to be, and I don't have the answer, so I'm just spitting out unformed thoughts here. But there certainly needs, in my view, to be an impetus from the club to think creatively and outside the box about how they can develop opportunities for players post career.
I know. I think I think you're on the right track there, Pete. And what that might be, I have no idea. But I think we are a much smaller market, and we can select from a national market. That's what the AFL will say. But it would be nice to be able to develop players like GWS have and Brisbane have, and Sydney, and then yes, you have to bid on them. There's no doubt about that. But by the same token, which ones to bid on, which ones are worth it, and which ones are going to make it, etc. And you do get a 20% discount on top of that. So it would be nice. It would be good.
Because at the moment, what we've got is almost a Moneyball squad. We've got blokes like Benny Keys and Mitch Hinge and a few other blokes through the rookie lists and all the rest of it. And when you consider that, we've actually done reasonably well. We lack top end talent, and we haven't unfortunately been and the draft is a lottery. You've got to be lucky enough to be in the right position in the draft in the right year to be able to gain access to the right players. And yes, we had a couple of bad years with McHenry and Jones and all the rest of it, but by and large, we've picked the players that have been there to pick at roughly the picks that we had available to us. So it's just luck. It's just luck.
Well, it is. I know And that's how it worked out this year in terms of, with the players that were available at certain positions. And to the club's credit, they tried their arse off to get into a position to get hold of either Cumming or Smith. They had the draft picks. So they weren't going to give us the opportunity to have a crack at that. So there were South Australian boys there, and they are players that are going to end up being good players. But yeah, as you said, the luck of where you are for the draw comes into it.
Yeah. Anyway, that'll do us. That was a extended Hall of Fame and news thing that went longer than it should have. We have the Gold Coast coming up on Saturday night in what I personally think is a massive danger game, big man, for us. I actually think we are... the Gold Coast are due for a win, and I feel like we are not in good form for whatever reason, despite having shown patches or whatever. And I think we're really vulnerable in this game.
Oh, it feels like every game's a danger game at the moment. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a history suggests that eventually, if you win a lot of games in a row, you're going to lose one. And if you lose a lot of games in a row, you're going to win one. And the Gold Coast are on a very dry spell at the moment. And they are going to win one eventually because they actually have a pretty good team, even though they're not playing well. I hope we're not the recipients of that. My hope is also that that was a really intense game for them on what was it, Saturday night against the Pies, and I just wonder how if that would have been quite draining, and it was particularly given that they really put up a pretty good show and they still couldn't get across the line at home. Whether that'd be deflating or not, maybe I'm just reading too much into it and they're just going to come out and just barnstorm us. I'm not sure, but look, the fact that it's at home for us has obviously is a big factor, and I'm not going to just say we're not going to win because at the end of the day we're in better form than them. As bad as we're going at the moment, we've had a better season than them, and I think we're a much more connected unit. As much as they've got A-grade talent, you wouldn't know because they've got so many good players that they don't know how to play roles, and they're very much a one-way team. So, and they're not a high-pressure team, so hopefully that helps us as well. But yeah, you want to catch them on the day that they actually really get going, and let's hope that's not this weekend. So I'm going to back us in. You're right, it is a danger game, but I think almost every game coming up for us that's not Perth, Freo and Perth and Sydney in the SCG, which I think are not danger games, they're games we're likely to lose anyway. But aside from the Essendon and Richmond games, the rest are absolutely danger games, and this is no different. So I'll back us in. I hope we play like we did against them last year because that was a fun year.
Maka?
Yeah, and I think we'll win this game. I watched Gold Coast. They lost their 6th game in a row, and they're not a team that takes pressure very well. Their travelling performances are even worse than their home game. So I just think that we had a poor game and we beat West Coast. I don't believe we could play that poorly again as we did. Hopefully, we make a couple of changes to a couple of players. Thilthorpe should be one that comes back in for a start. I'd give Walker a rest, hopefully. But I think, only a couple of changes. But I think that because the Suns are travelling they don't travel well. Well, they haven't. And I can't see what they've got Ben Long out. There's no reason, I think, why if we play the football that we've been playing most of the season, not last week, but most of the season, I think we should be capable to win this by 6 or 7 goals.
I mean, you both make very logical, rational, valid points, and yet I can't shake the feeling that we're going to get rolled. I don't know why, but I'm extremely pessimistic about this game. As you say, they've Long's out. They haven't got Rioli. I think there's question marks over Ben King too, I think. We should have Riley Thilthorpe back. Pedler is available by all reports. Archie's available by all reports. Who's the other one that's available for us? Who?
Pedler?
I said Pedler. There was one other. Pedler, Archie, Millerer, that's the one. Millerer should definitely be back in the frame this week. So we should have a pretty strong team on the park. Absolutely no reason why we shouldn't do what you said, Macca, and have a good 6 to 8 goal win. But for some reason, I'm just not seeing it. I don't know. I don't want to drag this out for too long because we've turned this into quite a long cast. But I'll run some. Your fault. I'll just run some names by each of you, and I just want you to say in or out. All right, Macca?
Yep.
I'll start with you. Tex Walker.
Out.
Big man. Tex Walker.
In.
Macca. Jake Saligo.
In.
Big man.
In.
Max Michaelani. Macca.
In.
Big man.
In.
James Borlase. Macca.
Out.
Big man.
In.
You're Matthew Nix, aren't you?
That's why I'm not on have a face cam, mate. You know my secret.
Macca. Billy Dowling.
Out.
Big man.
Out.
James Peatling. Big Macca.
In.
Big man.
Yeah, he's in.
Keys.
In.
Big man.
In.
You come after Macca, big man, just in case you hadn't recognised the pattern just yet.
Okay.
Nankervis, Macca.
I think he deserves to be in.
He's in. I can't drop him. He was too good.
That's more than one word. Zach Taylor, Macca.
In.
In.
All right. I'd probably say Walker out. If it were me picking the side, I'd have Walker out.
You forgot a name.
Oh, who did I forget?
Oh,
Zach Taylor. Who?
No, Toby Murray.
Oh, Toby Murray. Yeah, of course. Sorry. Toby Murray, Mac.
Out.
Out.
Okay. So I would be dropping Tex and Murray. I would also be dropping Dowling. And I would also be making a statement and dropping Max Michaelani. And I would be bringing in Riley Thilthorpe and Finbar Maley and Wayne Millerer and Luke Pedler.
Well, Michaelani's form hasn't been at its peak. I thought it was a little bit better this last game, which is why I said in. And I'm hoping that he's on the recovery pattern but he did have a very poor slump. He still didn't get really a lot of the ball, but I didn't think it was as bad.
So who are you bringing in, Mac?
No, I think three of the ones that you mentioned there. I wouldn't be replacing Michaelani though.
I don't love A and B. Big man, who are you bringing in?
That's why we said it, mate, to just rile you up.
It's so laughable it didn't have an impact on me.
To me, the relatively obvious change is Miller comes in for Dowling and Thilthorpe comes in for Ibis.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only question is if they play Moyle and Witts, will the coaches be tempted to keep Ibis in the team? It's going to be a wet game, though. They might.
Witz has been on the nose a bit lately, hasn't he?
He has. He had a pretty decent game in the VFL on the weekend, so they might reconsider it. Particularly playing away, they might want some extra leadership. But
Has been a bit of a thing to play 2 rucks against Adelaide, I've noticed.
Yeah, because McAndrew, he's not a great aerobic animal, so we can wear him down. So they might do that. Whether that actually forces their hand to play Ibis or not, I'm not sure. I wouldn't like to think we're dictated to like that. I'd still back in Thilthorpe, and because it's likely to be quite a wet game, particularly before the game's going to rain a lot. So, yes, it means more ruck contest, but I also think that we can't afford to play overly tall. But yeah, I think they're the 2 changes. I think Charlie Edwards would be pretty stiff after a good game on the weekend, and he's had a pretty good month in the SANFL, so he deserves a gig. I just don't see who he comes in for, particularly given that we're very locked into positions and roles, and he's basically an on-baller, and I don't see us dropping any of the on-ballers for him. So I suspect he's going to be the emergencies at most.
When you were talking there, though, you only mentioned Ibis. Fiend mentioned for the possibility of bringing in Finbar Maley. What do you think?
I don't think we need more talls. I know he's dropping Tex, but Tex was actually right in the wet against Geelong. I wouldn't mind just keeping him. I know
Tex has been terrible for a month.
He hadn't really justified his spot.
No, but he's still got the footy brain, the IQ that.
Nah, bullshit. This is exactly my point. You're really going to piss me off now.
Finbar doesn't have that.
It's exactly Finbar. Tex Walker does not deserve selection at the moment. On form, Tex Walker does not deserve selection at the moment. And we have. I'd rather play the kid than play Tex.
Wadowski.
Yeah.
No, I actually think I'd love to give Ludo a gig in against Essendon, maybe Richmond as well. But in this game in particular, I don't think it would suit him. The conditions in particular, but I know the Warriors.
Why not? I saw him play really good in the wet at Prospect a couple of weeks ago. Played really well in a mud heap at Prospect 2 weeks ago. I think the conditions will be fine.
I dropped out. No, I think he's going to be a good player, but I think there's an opportunity to give him a gig very soon. Wouldn't do it this week though. I think.
You don't have confidence in young players to step up, Matthew? There you go, big man. He dropped out. He's gone. He's gone. Mac, I was just watching your face, going, "Geez, it's nice when bloody boss gets into someone else apart from me."
You read me 100%. I was enjoying it.
Hopefully Big Man will be back. I think he's having some trouble with his connectivity at the moment. Look,
yeah, I think so.
I listened to what Big Man was saying, and I have great respect for his opinion, but it reflects exactly what I said at the beginning of the show. This issue of selection integrity and this issue of trusting young players and being aggressive and putting players under pressure for their spots and all that sort of stuff. And Tex doesn't deserve to be there. Toby Murray can't play in the wet. Shouldn't be there. James Borlase is the wrong matchup. Shouldn't be playing this week. Nick Murray should be in. Max Michaelani's had a shit month. Shouldn't be playing. There's probably questions over Jake Saligo, to be honest, although he redeemed himself a little bit in the last quarter. Shouldn't be there. Zach Taylor's right on the edge. We need to reward effort. Ludo and the Twos has been playing really well. Finbar Maley's had a really good month in the SANFL. Charlie Edwards has been playing really well in the SANFL. They need to be rewarded.
No, look, I agree with you, Pete. And, Tex is probably the biggest issue in people's minds because, he's been a champion of the club. But at the end of the day, it's what has he contributed in the last few weeks? And it's been very little. And the best way of getting some form back is to let him know it's not good enough. And you do that by replacing him. And Borlays, big man's come back. Big man, you still there, mate?
God.
Oh, he's gone again. He must be having some internet problems.
Yeah. No, so I think that it is an opportunity. I think that to actually give somebody else an opportunity there, and I think I actually like the idea of. Was that the Macca? What'd you say? I don't know.
Just stop watching the chat and concentrate on what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Now, what I was about to say was that I agree with all. I agree with. Okay, I'm a child. I agree with all the changes bar one. Michael Lanny at this stage, I think he did just enough in that game to hold his spot. But the other changes, I totally agree with.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. I think we'll make forced changes. I could see Billy Dowling's the obvious one that comes out. Toby Murray comes out probably because of the conditions, and Riley Thilthorpe coming back in. We won't drop Tex. Miller comes in for Dowling, obviously, and I think we might try and squeeze. I wouldn't mind betting the other one that they're toying with Macca is probably Luke Pedlar for Zach Taylor. Because I don't know how else Luke gets back into the side, and I think they want him in the side. I would be having him in for Ben Keys personally, but I don't think they have the appetite to drop Ben Keys. So the only other one that seems obvious, I don't think they'll think about Archie this week. But I reckon Zach Taylor might be the one in the gun for Luke Pedlar.
Well, I thought Taylor plays a specific role, and
I know what he does. I know what he does, but who else are you going to bring Luke Pedlar in for?
Yeah, I know where you say you get to a point where you've got to actually probably, if you want to get somebody really in bad enough, you're going to have to remove somebody who probably doesn't quite deserve it.
Correct. They're not going to drop Neil Bullen. They're not going to drop Ben Keys. Obviously, Rash and Ranks are in there. Nankervis deserves to hold his spot more than Zach Taylor, in my opinion. And yes, Zach Taylor does play a bit of a thankless role, but I think they're really keen to get Luke Pedlar back in the side. Saligo would be maybe the other one, Munjit, but I reckon Saligo maybe just did enough at the back end of last week to hold his spot.
Yeah, and that's probably the case for about 4 players that could be in the running to go. They just did enough this week to hold their spot. Whereas if they, on their previous 2 or 3 games, they probably would have been out the door. So, but they just happened to play a good game at the right time.
You fed the mouse on the treadmill now, big man?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, can
We
now.
can.
Sorry, because I had the mic in my thing, I didn't actually know it was about to run out of battery, and then I plugged it in, and I had to put my mic back in, and it bloody ran out of battery again. So,
Look, tell the truth.
Embarrassing. Sorry, sorry about that.
You were getting ripping from Phil, and you ran away. That's the truth, isn't it?
I couldn't handle bloody boss's text talk. No, I'm joking.
Bit of Tuesday night heat.
No, look, I like debate. Do you legitimately think Tex is going to get dropped though?
I'm saying it should. That's the conversation.
And I'm saying he should too. Seriously, he just if you're honest and selectly on form, he would drop him. Whether they've got the courage to do it or the common sense to do it, I don't know. But he hasn't played well. You can't say he has, big man. He hasn't played well.
Is there a world where you keep Ibis in the team but drop Tex?
No.
No. Good God, no. No, I thought Ibis was a liability on the weekend.
Well, he can't play in the wet anyway. We know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's barely standing up in the dry at the moment. Poor bloke.
Yeah. No, I think there should probably be 3 or 4, and I bet, like you said, they'll probably only make a couple.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's counting in Texas' favour is that he's got 6 goals to make 700. And we know that the Adelaide Crows love a good hometown milestone.
Yeah, a good home stat, yep.
So
It's pretty bad.
they would hate.
You get factored into things.
Oh, come on, big man.
I know.
Surely you're
I
not
know.
that.
I know what it is,
Surely
but
you're not
it
that
should-
naive. We have a history of getting players to game milestones and club milestones. We have a history of it.
Yeah, I think, although I'm saying it, I think Tex should be dropped. I don't think he will be, for the very reasons you just said, Pete.
Yeah. All right, final thoughts. Your tip, Mako?
Yeah, no, I'm still sticking with it. I think we'll win by 6 or 7 goals. I'd be very surprised if we didn't.
Big man?
Yeah, I think I'll tip us by 3 goals, but I'm not confident either, for what it's worth.
I think we lose by 4. Now, I'll just say, and I will put reminders in the chat during the week. But we've over the last couple of weeks, we've had a bit of a drop off in the Crowcast best and fairest votes. It's not a huge deal, except it becomes a bit less representative. So if you do get the chance, the voting tends to open at the end of the round, so not at the end of the match. So hold your fire until the end of the round and then stick your votes in. If we can get a good, 6 to 12 people voting, that's a good spread, and we can get a representative number for our best and fairest. All right, 2.5 hours. Thanks for coming, big man. You've kept me awake a bit longer than I otherwise would.
Well, look, I know I'm partly to blame, but I think it was good to have a chat about the broader issues at the moment, because I think there's just so much going wrong with the AFL and how ridiculous things are. But pleasure as always to chat with you, and of course, Mac. I don't get the opportunity too often, so thanks for having me on your show, Mac.
Pretty much so, mate. But always enjoyed being on with you, mate.
I appreciate
I
it.
wish I could only go Macca once every 6 weeks. That'd be great. I got to put up with him every Tuesday.
Don't take that, Macca.
Oh, I don't give a shit. He can say what he likes.
Perfect response, mate. Perfect response. All right. Well, look, thanks for sticking with us, everyone, during this marathon. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, you can give us a like and subscribe. It helps us with the algorithm. Consider also joining our Discord community if you haven't already. There's lots of good banter on during the week and on game days, as well as during the podcast on Sunday nights and Tuesday nights. Thanks for everyone for participating. Thanks to Next Body Corporate Services for supporting the podcast. Until Sunday, be good, stay safe, and we'll see you all then. Night, everyone.
Yep. Yeah, good night, all.
Night, guys.